My first love of 15 years is leaving me, claiming I'm a privileged princess while I supported him through his demons. You're the source of my problems, he said, even after everything I've sacrificed. Now I'm lost, drowning in self-doubt. Was love enough? I will attempt to summarize 15 years of history as succinctly as possible. I apologize for the length. So much has transpired, and I am quite uncertain about how to navigate these issues. I was 17 when I first met my husband, who was my first love and boyfriend, although I was not his. He was also 17 and had moved out of his mother's house to live independently due to significant trauma from his childhood. When we met, he was in the midst of a troubling court experience, testifying against his abuser. Too much time had passed and there was insufficient evidence, allowing the perpetrator to escape without consequences, a fact that has haunted my husband ever since. I felt immense empathy for him and did everything I could to support him. When he suggested that I move out of my own home so we could rent together, I thought it was a reasonable request. I believed I could help and support him through his difficulties, and we could build an incredible life together. In retrospect, I see how naive I was. I genuinely thought that if I loved him with all my heart, it would be sufficient. However, things became challenging. He lacked love and stability at home, and while he appreciated what I offered, it was also foreign to him. It soon became clear that I was a peace seeker, striving to find ways for us to be content and happy with what we had, even if it was not much. Even though he was not perfect, I believed we could make things work. He, however, was trapped in a cycle of bitterness, and at first I was his ally. He would vent about how unfair society was to men, how terrible people were to one another, and how no one gave him a chance to show who he truly was. I accepted everything he said, convinced he was a misunderstood boy who simply needed opportunities to succeed, but the detrimental habits stemming from his trauma were hindering his progress. The stress of transitioning from a stable and quiet home to a partner who was emotionally unstable was becoming more than I could recognize at the time, though. Managing his emotions, taking care of our apartment, working full-time, and finishing high school became overwhelming. I fell very ill, and for several years we could not determine the cause. I would vomit everything I consumed and drop to 80 pounds from my usual weight of 125. I was trying to survive, working as much as I could, easing my husband's worries about me and life, while also trying to discover the actual cause of my illness. It took a long time to find out that I had celiac disease, and even longer to manage the diet and cross-contamination risks so that I could return to normalcy. Meanwhile, he became angry with me for the difficulties life presented or for things I had or had not done, often expressing his worries about me leaving him and discussing suicide and how hard his life was. I repeatedly endured pain yet returned because I was raised to be very empathetic. I kept putting my own hurts aside to support him. I thought that the difference in our privileges growing up meant I had to shoulder what I could to help him find himself and achieve peace. I worked tirelessly to improve my health, trying to work as much as possible, only taking a few years off during the worst periods. At one point, I experienced a form of agoraphobia, fearful of gluten exposures and the damage they caused. However, I attended therapy and gradually regained control over my circumstances. Through that therapy, I also learned to set healthier boundaries so I could establish the space needed for recovery. Once I found my footing, my grandfather passed away, and my grandmother offered to use my inheritance to attend college, as I had hoped to do before falling ill. I chose software engineering, believing it would lead to a solid career I could manage even with the challenges posed by celiac disease. I wanted to help recover our finances and put my husband through college next so he could have opportunities too. The issue, however, was that over time my husband's resentment toward me grew as our struggles persisted. While I was sick, he was struggling to maintain employment, clashing with coworkers or superiors, which caused him to quit or get fired repeatedly. I tried to work as much as I could while ill and support him through his moods, but this hindered my own recovery efforts as I endeavored to keep us afloat. Eventually, my parents began to intervene and over the years contributed over $25,000 to help us manage. This was because I begged them to have compassion for his traumas, which I believed contributed to his negative behaviors. I asked our friends to forgive him when he offended others by ignoring their feelings in pursuit of his own sense of justice. I tried to maintain peace so he could have the support he often complained of lacking, even while he continued to lash out at everyone around him. I also began to request that he be more responsible for household chores and finances, as a significant issue throughout our relationship was his impulsive spending, which often resulted in hundreds of dollars per week vanishing from our budget due to fast food, coffee, cannabis, and toys that entertained him for only a short period. Meanwhile, he would claim that the costs of my medication and gluten-free food were the reasons he could not afford to invest in himself. We had the money, but I could not allocate it where it needed to go before it disappeared. My only three requests were for help around the house, the establishment of a weekly entertainment budget, and greater respect for others' feelings and boundaries when socializing. For him, however, it was much more. Small issues and mistakes became evidence for much larger grievances. He began to convince himself that I did not care about him and labeled me a privileged princess who could not possibly understand how society mistreated him. He claimed that I was too self-centered for the boundaries I had established in an effort to cope with our codependency. No matter how often I pointed out what I could do and what I was doing, he would argue that they were incomparable to his needs. Yet his needs were constantly shifting and depended on the situation. I am not particularly quick on my feet, but he wanted to see me take immediate action. I have a poor memory, yet he expected me to recall things he mentioned in passing conversations. I have flaws, as any human does, and I never tried to claim otherwise. All I would request was that he collaborate with me, perhaps by writing down details or helping me in the moment. Instead, he felt he had done enough and did not want to exert any more effort for me. He wanted me to confront everyone in our lives over causes he found just, even if it meant isolating me because he believed he should be sufficient. Over time, everything about me became intolerable to him. He expressed his anger or disappointment at countless aspects of my being. I tried to keep up, but even with my typically boundless empathy, I began to feel frustrated with the impossible standards he imposed on me, while demanding that all our loved ones accommodate his behavior and refrain from judging him. When I started college, everything began to unravel. The first year was marked by suicide threats. Within the first few months, he attempted suicide multiple times, including once during an argument about him seeking proper help. I usually maintained high grades, but I struggled to keep my average while dealing with the emotional turmoil of trying to keep him alive and stabilize our situation. This is when much of the debt to my parents accrued, as they assisted in paying rent and bills while he took a year off. He resented me for worrying about finances, believing I had already cost him too much when I was ill. He would exaggerate how long I had been out of work and insisted that he deserved the same treatment. Eventually, I managed to convince him to reconnect with his family, and together, we helped him return to work. He found a good job as a security guard in a library, which was peaceful and easy compared to his previous construction work, and he was treated more kindly than when he wore his punk-like outfits. He appreciated the positive attention, but it only emphasized the negative feelings he harbored toward me. His resentment deepened during my second year of college, which was significantly more challenging than the first. I struggled to keep up with the coursework as I had never done programming before. He insisted that our relationship issues could not wait. He believed that despite the difficulties of college, I had responsibilities to him that I was not fulfilling. I was exhausted and at my wits' end. I could no longer be the supportive partner I usually was. I needed support myself, but he had withdrawn. He begrudged having to cook meals, wash dishes, or maintain chores despite my having handled them alone for years. He complained once again about being on the sidelines while everyone treats you as the main event. He disliked that our friends preferred to come to me for arranging get-togethers or that they were more open with me about their feelings regarding him. He craved honesty from others, even if it meant conflict, because he believed fighting was healthy. However, for everyone else, they were unaware of his limits and lacked the energy to engage in battles as he did. Consequently, people often capitulated to avoid conflict in his presence. For most of our lives together, he would express everything he hated about me, my family, our friends, his family, and most individuals he met. The only people he seemed to enjoy were new acquaintances who were unaware or cautious of his more aggressive tendencies. He would maintain cordiality for as long as possible until he eventually slipped, which would lead them to become distant from both of us or to rely more heavily on me, further fueling his frustration regarding society's judgment of men. Finally, by the end of my second year, we attended a party with our cohort to celebrate some members' accomplishments while others, like myself, would continue for another year. I brought my husband in hopes of bonding and for him to meet my college friends, but when we arrived, he quickly became distant. I spent the party searching for him as he drank heavily and socialized without me. I attempted to persuade him to join me 3 separate times, but he walked away each time. By the end of the night, as people were leaving to head home, I was also ready to go. I still had one more exam to prepare for and felt utterly heartbroken. He boasted about consuming 17 to 19 drinks and expressed a desire to attend an after-party, only to disappear into the bathroom for a lengthy period while we waited in the hallway. He finally emerged, only to refuse to move and vomited again, arguing with others that he was not drunk while trying to join conversations. My classmates looked at me with shock and sympathy. This was the person I had praised for years. I took a cab we could not afford, and he vomited once more in the elevator on the way home. By the time we arrived at our apartment, I needed to use our grocery cart to pull him inside. I stayed awake to ensure he did not asphyxiate and collapsed at some point once he appeared stable. The following day, I was upset, and when he noticed and I shared my feelings, his response was, "Now you know how I feel," as if I deserved what he had done. I was deeply hurt, yet I lacked the time to unpack the major issues he was opening, especially with my crucial exam approaching, one that could determine whether I would receive credit that would be nearly impossible to repeat due to the evolving nature of my program. I went to my brother's place until I completed the exam, only to fall very ill, likely with COVID-19, and struggled to breathe or talk for an entire week. Ultimately, I sat him down one night, hoping to resume communication and focus on his needs for the summer. However, he demanded that I return to live with my parents for 4 months, promising to reconsider our relationship based on my actions during that time. He claimed he intended to bring me back for my final year of college, but he did not communicate this clearly and took steps toward separation, including opening a separate bank account. When I confronted him about the debt I had incurred in his name to help my parents, he told me he owed neither me nor my family anything. However, he overlooked the fact that my parents had to sign as tenants for our apartment, and they were understandably furious at how he was treating me and them after so many olive branches extended to him regarding his past behavior. They informed me that I would remain in the apartment for my final year of college and that he would have to move out, prohibited from taking any of the items they had gifted us, which comprised nearly all our furniture and appliances. Thus, he would have to start anew. He was displeased with this arrangement and accused me of escalating the situation beyond what he wanted for us and abandoning him. I reminded him that secretly opening a new bank account and discussing mediation did not constitute a genuine effort at resolution. Nevertheless, he refused to relent, insisting he needed space for me to find happiness with or without me. He expressed a desire for us to attend therapy, although he was uncertain about its worth and whether he wanted to continue our relationship following everything that had occurred. I find myself in a state I have never experienced before. I never dated anyone before him, and I spent my time with him trying to soothe his emotional struggles and support him, only to gradually become the source of his problems and the burden he felt he needed to offload. I genuinely wanted to give everything I had and could be to him. I wanted to see what we could build together, even if it meant sometimes sacrificing for him or providing support during challenges I found manageable, but he did not. I aimed to give him space to be human with all his flaws and ups and downs. Yet I was insufficient for him. I could not meet his needs, and whatever I did was deemed worthless. Over time, he transitioned from declaring he could not live without me to expressing a desire to live without me. I keep falling into cycles of self-doubt. Am I really such an intolerable person? Am I such a failure as a partner that I have been subjected to his criticisms or abandoned without warning? I do not comprehend how he expects my love for him to persist while simultaneously seeking time apart to possibly return if he feels inclined to do so. I wonder if his new job has made him feel I am no longer beneficial to him. I was love and stability during his disputes with his mother, but now that he has reconnected with her and things seem to be improving, I am the remaining obstacle in his life. Without me, he could eat freely, be free of debt, and avoid rectifying the consequences of his past actions. He could live freely with me, merely a footnote in his history. I feel as though I have given everything, only to be left feeling worthless and unlovable. My family and friends assure me otherwise, yet it is difficult to recognize their words when all I hear are his constant complaints about what he finds unsatisfactory or abhorrent in me, including his belief that my future career is nothing but promises of fairy dust and that I will always be a burden. I wanted to fight for him, yet he seems to have decided long ago that I was the enemy. He insists that 15 years is too significant to abandon, claiming I am a kind and loving person he does not wish to part with, even as he is doing precisely that. We are stuck living together until June, and each day I spiral over how to convince him I am worth the effort versus the pain and anger stemming from how he has treated me. We try to exchange the occasional hug and maintain a superficial level of peace, akin to roommates, yet we cannot discuss our feelings without it devolving into arguments where he lists everything I have done wrong, while I plead for any opportunity to genuinely address the issues instead of him simply giving up on me. I feel like a fool who once believed in the notion that love is all you need, and could not keep pace with the expectations imposed upon me. I am attempting to search for summer employment as initially planned, but each time I contemplate how to persuade an employer to hire me, I become mired in thoughts of inadequacy and the disappointment of letting down the person I worked hardest for. I struggle to maintain anger for long. I quickly burn out, empathizing with the other side. I become consumed with ruminations about what I could have done differently, or if there was anything I could have done at all to prevent his feelings from leading to this point, or if I was always someone he would ultimately discard for failing to meet his expectations. I apologize for the lengthy post. I suppose the summary is, how do I reclaim my sense of self-worth? Should I fight to help him realize he could mend relationships if he respected others' boundaries a bit more, or demonstrate that my future is indeed substantial and that I am not the burden he continues to exaggerate in his mind? Is there a way to help a loved one emerge from such a deep pit of accumulated bitterness? Should I believe him when he says he wants to resolve our issues? Or is he merely attempting to ease his own stress as he prepares to leave for what he hopes will be a better future without me? Many will likely advise me to let go, but I also do not know how to do that when I invested so much of myself in believing we could understand each other and grow old together. Furthermore, I am unsure whether I adequately captured his feelings in this post, making it challenging to heed internet advice without disregarding my experiences with him throughout my life. He meant everything to me, and I do not know how to piece together what he has left behind so that I can move forward. I must repay my parents. I cannot let those who depend on my more cheerful demeanor down. I need to keep up appearances to manage what I need to. However, every time I consider my life without him, I spiral into a tangle of confusion and emotions, questioning why I am being treated this way. I attempt to engage in my hobbies and interests, but my mind continuously returns to these thoughts, and this has persisted for weeks. It cannot continue this way. I lack the experience to progress meaningfully. I have tried to schedule therapy, but it is taking time. I appreciate any kind words and even the harsh perspective. I feel utterly lost in my overthinking and could benefit from outside opinions. Story 2. After a night out, I trusted my boyfriend and friend to share a bed, only to wake up to betrayal. I thought it was okay since we had a threesome before, he said, while I lay there clueless. Can you believe he touched her while I slept just feet away? So my boyfriend, 21, and I, 19, went out for drinks at a place we typically do not visit, but we were short on cash since he had recently helped me add funds needed to purchase my dream phone. We left both of our phones at home and brought along a burner phone because the location was questionable, and we did not want to risk being robbed. Since it was an unfamiliar area, I called my friend to inquire about specifics, such as where we were supposed to get off while using public transportation, as she was familiar with the place and had recommended it to us. However, she automatically assumed that we were inviting her to join us for drinks, so she included herself in our plans and informed us that she would be meeting us there with a friend of hers. Fast forward to around 2 a.m. after many drinks and everyone being significantly intoxicated, my friend was leaving with the guy she came with, and we realized that we also needed to get home. She was the only person we knew in that area, so we needed her phone to request an Uber. For some reason, there were no available cabs, and we looked on different applications. She then suggested that we crash at her place until around 6 a.m. to see if we could request a ride then or wait for the public bus. For context, my boyfriend and I had explored new aspects of our relationship, and last year in December we had a threesome with that friend, so we were all fairly well acquainted. However, it did not go as I had hoped because I felt left out the entire time and was uncomfortable. We later decided that that lifestyle was not for us. Anyway, during the bus ride there, I asked my boyfriend to please not make things awkward and to act normally. We discussed the previous experience, and I explicitly told him that I did not want a repeat of what had happened the last time, and we both agreed that we would not engage in any more threesomes and would act casual about the last one. Now back to the details. We arrived at her place and I fell asleep immediately. We had worked out an arrangement where she slept in the middle of us facing us and we slept in the opposite direction, so her feet were essentially between our heads. I trusted my boyfriend enough to allow him to sleep in the same bed as my friend, and at this point, we did not have much choice. Tell me why the next morning after we left her place, my boyfriend confessed to having touched her while I was sleeping right there. He explained that he was awakened by someone touching him and that he knew it was not me because I would never disrespect someone who provided us with a place to stay by having sex on their bed while they are asleep right there. It seems I am the only one who considered this courtesy because the two of them did not care about it or about my feelings. He touched her back, pulled down her trousers, fondled her buttocks and thighs, unzipped his pants, and allowed her to pleasure him while he touched her. He told me that she tried to engage in intercourse, but he did not let her, and that is when he woke me up. He did wake me up and wanted to have sex with me, but I was so groggy from sleep that I told him to wait until we got home. He kept asking and asking, even after I said no a million times. I just assumed he was feeling aroused at that moment. I did not realize that the girl was still pleasuring him while he spoke to me. I was shocked when he asked me if it was acceptable for him to have sex with my friend instead since I did not want to be intimate with him. I was too angry to respond and honestly thought he was joking because that was so disrespectful. I asked him why he would do this to me, and he claimed he thought it was acceptable since we had all engaged in a threesome once, and he wanted to make up for the last one we had by initiating this one. Keep in mind, we had already agreed to not have another threesome. I'm not sure I believe that he did not penetrate because he could be lying. Do you all think I am wrong to leave and break up with him over this? Yes, I understand that I consented to a threesome once, but that was then and does not mean free reign, and I was not exactly thrilled with the first one. He completely disregarded me, disrespected me, and blames it on wanting to enhance my experience, but I did not ask for it. I was dead asleep and did not consent to any threesome and certainly was not even asked.